instead of going into the doom loop over pain, right? And then you get reactive. Oh my gosh, I want this pain to stop. I'm going to do something about it. Why is this happening in the first place? Let's chill out. Let's take a step back. Let's ask some questions.
So today we're talking with Dan Hanson, CEO of Hanson Remodeling in Minneapolis. Dan's one of those rare leaders who built a strong culture and hit every goal he set, then found himself asking, now what? That question led him to a deeper journey of leadership growth and purpose. Welcome to Escape the CEO Doom Loop, where we talk with real-world leaders about the challenge of building great companies without losing your clarity, energy, or sanity. I'm John Ninkovich, joined by my co-host, Glenn Dahl. We're both metronomics coaches. And Dan, we're happy to have you on our podcast today. Could you start by just giving us a little bit of an introduction into what Hanson Remodeling is really all about, how you got to the point you're at, and let's just start with that kind of intro.
We focus on existing homes in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and the first ring of suburbs is where our core client and where we want to be for now is. And I've always loved homes. Ever since I was a kid, I would want to go to the open houses and the parade of homes. I got to tour some Frank Lloyd Wright houses with my folks early on and build a house when I was 10. And I just got the bug. And so graduated with degrees in business management and philosophy, and just I wanted to try carpentry after that, which I did. So, and then just turned out I loved it, and it didn't feel like work. It just felt like it was exactly what I wanted to do. It had that great combination between me being engaged mentally because I was outside of my element. I was really good at writing papers, but wasn't great at reading a tape measure. And so learning that was a great challenge. It was super fun. 2008 happened. There wasn't really any work for someone with a business degree who wanted to get into product management on the carpentry side. I was doing carpentry. Then from there, I decided to go out and start my own business. And I didn't know what it was going to be. I didn't set out with really clear goals. About a year and a half or 2 years in is when I started to think, oh, I should probably try to make something of this, and set some goals. And Glenn said, achieve those. And that was great. And then I was like, oh, okay, well, now what? And so connected with Glenn, and Glenn's been helping me get our vision and North Star and where we're headed. And it's been really fun.
That's awesome. When did you get to the realization, how far into you founding the company, figuring out some initial goals, accomplishing those goals, and then looking at, maybe I need some help? Like, how far into that journey did you make a decision that you were going to use?
Yeah, I had other business coaches that kind of, I think, different businesses at different stages need different coaches. It's not that one size fits all. I had taken it as far as I could go while still having fun, but I was stuck in that I was still mostly the business, and I wanted to grow beyond that. And so it wasn't until year 15 of the business that I really reached out to Glenn. But I had some other coaches, but Glenn was a really great fit for helping me essentially get unstuck. I was just thinking that the next mountain I was going to climb, I had to do it all. And Glenn is really the one who's helped me get into the idea of developing other leaders and getting the business positioned to get beyond me, which is really exciting.
That's awesome. Cool. Well, let's start here. We call this podcast Escape the CEO Doom Loop. And it really was derived out of a research project that Glenn and I and a couple of the coaches did 3 or 4 years ago. And we interviewed 72 or 75 CEOs across the globe. And when we started to analyze the data, there was this kind of overarching theme that being CEO is hard and difficult. And out of it, we saw this thing that we've now named the Doom Loop, which is this place where CEO Doom Loop, where we see that CEOs end up there a lot. So I guess the first question, this is where we start with everybody, is have you ever found yourself in the CEO Doom Loop? And if so, can you tell us a story about what that looked like for you and how you were there?
Yes, I have been. Sometimes at 2 or 3 in the morning, fortunately.
Usually when it strikes.
Yeah. Or after 80, 90-hour work weeks. It almost always happens. Basically, I haven't done enough. I've extended myself too much and basically go into ineffective lines of thinking and reactionary thinking because the problems that I want to solve them right away, right? I think any good CEO has to have that gumption to just get up and get it done. And that serves you really well in a lot of areas. And you also, though, have to be aware enough to say, actually, I shouldn't apply that ability to keep going right now. Actually, what I need to apply is taking my foot off the gas. And so to give you some examples are around personnel issues, right? Where, oh my gosh, now we are either going to have to fire someone. And if we fire them, how are we going to bring somebody else in? We're right in the middle of a project. Our projects need to keep going. It's our reputation that is at stake. Then you have a disgruntled client. And so you combine that with personnel issues with client who's frustrated and upset. And then as me, I get sucked into the work because I want to try to solve it. And then all of a sudden I put myself in a position that isn't great for the company. You think you're trying to solve the personnel issues. And I've realized that a lot of times by inserting myself immediately without asking questions, without being curious first, without being calm, it just gets everybody else going too. And then you actually have more problems as a CEO, right? You have more things to do now when really the answer probably should have been, okay, I'm going to bring level-headedness and calmness to this situation, and then everybody feels more at ease. And then your people start to be at ease too. Okay, this doesn't feel great, yet we don't have to be reactionary. We can use our systems, we can reach out to our coach, and we can get some perspective on this. And that's what Glenn has been there for me on several occasions where, Glenn, I probably shouldn't be calling you right now because I'm not in a great place, but I need to talk through this. And he's walked me off the ledge a couple of times. Great.
Yeah, I love that. I used to say it's like I'm walking off the plank to jump in the shark-laden waters. It's what it feels like a lot when you're CEO. Lonely.
Yeah.
Hey, you're making decisions with limited information.
Yeah.
And it can be really nerve-wracking.
Yeah. It's interesting, Dan, how you talk about your journey. And then when we met, I know we met several times. You came to a workshop that I've been doing for the Remodelers Association. And then we talked, I think 2 or 3 times after that. And Marshall Goldsmith, John, you probably know this, says, Dan, you know this as well, would say, you know what got you here won't get you there. And so, Dan, what you talk about is that gumption and that, hey, there's a problem, we're going to address it, works really well for that stage of business that you were at or had gotten to. You built this thing from you in a pickup truck to a legitimate business. You had a team, you had management, great reputation. You're getting stuck. It's many times for us as CEOs, it's that attitude of, hey, I've got the gumption to jump in and take care of this, that gets us stuck. Because to get to the next level of growth is all about, and Dan, the answer to this, you know what I would say to that? What's the next level of growth?
Creating leaders.
Create leaders, yeah.
It's a whole new level of thinking about business for me, where in order for us to go to the next level, I need to take myself to the next level. It's like John Maxwell's law of the lid.
That leadership led.
And I couldn't say what I see now after a year and a half of working with Glenn and knowing him for 2 years is very different perspective than when we first. And I think the other thing is, for me, also start my own business, not always the most patient person.
Yeah.
And this part of the business takes time. It takes a lot of time and patience. And you have to decide along the Jim Collins line, are you going to develop leaders or replace leaders? And you need to be constantly evaluating that. It is a daily effort, and the progress is there, but it is not like you've scored a touchdown and you clearly know it's just show up again tomorrow, and you iterate and you practice and you get a little bit better.
You were with us in Chicago last year for for Jim Collins, right? This year, John was there as well, and I know, Dan, you weren't able to make it this year, but Jim had issued the same question he did last year. You might remember it, where he said to the audience, he was talking about level 5 leaders.
Yep.
And Jim said, okay, I want to ask the audience, there's 475 people there, a question. what percentage of people do you think Jim Collins thinks can truly be level 5 leaders? And then he came back and said greater than 75%.
Yeah. It's a shockingly
And
high number. I think the three of us we have some perspective on this. I know Glenn and I get to be around a lot of businesses and a lot of people in those businesses. And when I look at like the teams, and as you were talking about, Dan, your job is to build leaders beneath them. Like, I think that these concepts that we're talking about is really hard and foreign for a lot of people to even think about that even today, right? Even with business coaching being such a prevalent thing today, I just don't see that still is happening as systematically as it probably needs to, which is good for Glenn and I, right? Because I think that's why we have a job. But I don't know; those seem like really crazy high numbers to me. If I just go look at all the people that work in every business that I've been around over the last 8 years of doing this work, to think that 75% of those people could be level 5 leaders, that just is a staggering high number to me.
Yeah. And I think that maybe it isn't, who knows what that's based on. But I think you do need to have that belief and that faith as a CEO and as a leader that you're always seeing the good in the capacity in people. One of the themes for me lately has been, you know what, it doesn't matter whether you can do it, Dan. Your people need to believe that they can do it. Yeah. And me swooping in as the owner with my cape sometimes and being like, I can solve this. I've got all the solutions, is actually tends to, over the long haul, undercut your people and what I'm trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
And that's hard. It's really hard because you can see the money flying off the back of a train sometimes. And it takes a lot of patience to sit through and watch that and realize that it's an investment. So that makes it a little bit easier, but it's still hard.
Yeah, it's hard. Hey, can I go back to when we asked the question to you, but have you ever been in the CEO doom loop? You said when you get there, it's because I think I heard you say it's you're not using or worrying about not enough self-care is what I think you said. When you use those words self-care, for everybody's listening, what does that mean when you use the word self-care when you're either in the doom loop or why you end up there?
I think when I realize I'm getting reactionary and getting into a doom loop, right, where you're compounding problems essentially. And when I think about the times where usually I'm a very optimistic, go get them type of person, I really enjoy the challenge of running a business. I'm excited about the challenges. I don't look at the rocks I'm trying to push up hills and think, man, I don't want to do that. I think, oh, but that's going to be really hard. I'm excited about it. When I'm in the doom loop, when I'm not doing well, it's either because of, and I say this with kindness, but it's either but ignorance. I just don't have the skills yet. I don't have the perspective, or I don't have the systems in place, or I don't have the right people, or I'm really tired. I haven't slept well, right?
Yeah.
You start to look at why you're reactionary and why I'm fearful. And it's those things I mentioned, but then it starts to get into, oh, yeah, you've been going to bed at midnight or 1 and getting up at 5 for the last 4 or 5 nights in a row.
Right.
And then you've been skipping your workouts. I love exercise. You've been skipping your workouts. That's what self-care is making sure you're sleeping, making sure I'm getting my thinking time, my reflective time, meditative time, and then getting my time to work out. And then just being aware also of the way I'm interacting with people. But if I'm in that reactionary state, probably not a great time to be addressing problems. Actually, it's usually a good time, unless you absolutely have to, go to bed. Start again tomorrow. Sometimes you got to put down the tools, which in a lot of times it's our mind, right? Put the tools down, chill out a little bit.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I love that answer. And I've been there. So you're in the middle of the doom loop and you're not sleeping. And when you hit your pillows, when all the thoughts really start, right? I don't know why that is, but that's where it really happens. So do you have any secrets for how to sleep when you feel like you're in the doom loop?
I'm grateful enough that I have perspective there. I get up usually. If I'm not able to sleep, right, I'm going to get up and do something constructive with whatever I need to do, whether it's, okay, do I need to write a few things down for tomorrow in order for me to feel better? Great. Do the mental dump, get that taken care of.
Yeah.
But then I'll make tea and I will do a crossword puzzle, or I'll pick up a book that doesn't actually have to do with work. That is something that I'm just genuinely interested in. And I then
Yeah.
express some gratitude. There
Yeah.
are people that don't have my comfortable house, and I love cereal, so I'll make cereal in the middle of the night and just start to express some gratitude. And usually that helps me out.
Yeah.
Some of the things that Dan was talking about is things I absolutely do and have a habit of. And one of them is the self-reflection, journaling, expressing gratitude. That's one of the things in the evening is taking time before bed and writing out, what did I accomplish today? We talk about the gap and the gain, right? And it's like, even there's just, what did I do that was positive? It could be something little, something small. It doesn't be a big thing, but I moved the ball forward today, maybe just a little bit. Where didn't I? Where could I learn? What could I do better? But then who am I grateful for and what am I grateful for? And usually within my day, there's always people who just help me along the way, add value to my life, or maybe I've added value to their life and I'm just thankful that able to help them. So that's always a
Yeah.
good one.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you guys to describe the gap and the gains. I think this is really important for that kind of self-care that Dan was talking about, is that it's really around, as business leaders, as CEOs, it's never good enough. And that's always living on that gap. And I think we all know what that's like. We're not getting enough done. We don't have enough the right people. We're not making enough money. I got problems with clients.
Haven't hit
It's
our
just all of
goals.
this stuff. We're not
Yeah.
hitting our goals. It's all that gap stuff. And it can eat you alive. And I think that I love where you went with this, Dan, at the beginning of this, because I think that we as CEOs, we as business owners, we have to be able to manage our mental approach, because it affects not only us and our family, but all the people that are looking at us. And so the gain is
Yeah.
really about understanding, all right, what progress have we made? What are all the things that we put in place? We've changed our financial, or I'm healthy, or we've hired a new A player, or we made a hard people decision to get rid of the C player, we've been A player. And wow, is that rewarding? So it's really about, I think, the reflection of what's really going good in our life right now, both business and personally, and not focusing on all the negative and the bad stuff, and almost being able to compartmentalize that and put it away. I start to be more careful about what I'm putting into my head.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, John, too, the work that we do and get to work with a lot of CEOs and business owners, and the phenomenon, which I've also seen of, I'm going to read another book and then I'll feel bad because I'm not implementing this thing or I'm not doing this thing. And then we come back, we immediately say, hey, we've got to do this thing. And the team is, I thought we already had our quarterly priorities laid out, and I thought we knew where we were going and who was doing what.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden we come in and throw this bomb in and we're like, no, we're not doing enough. We need to do this thing, which, again, going back to what got us where we are now as entrepreneurs is having those ideas and implementing those ideas and being innovative. But to a point, you start getting a whole team and we're just changing directions erratically. It could be really, really confusing for the rest of the organization when we do those things. So that's goes back to the
Yeah.
idea of, be careful of reading too many books.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating, because I think I find, and we read a lot, Glenn. I mean, it's part of what we have to do. And Dan, you are too, because you mentioned some great books already. But I think that you got to be careful, because I think that you can, at least me, maybe other people deal that way. It's always, I immediately go to the gap. I'm not good enough. I'm not doing this good enough. That should be better. What am I doing? What am I thinking? It's like, you got a lot of good things going on. You're like, God, I stink at what I'm doing. I'm not very good at what I'm doing. And I think you have to be careful.
Yeah, you have to walk that line where if you're positive and if you're seeing the good in your people and you are showing them that you believe in them, they're going to start to feel that. If you are down on yourself and you are constantly walking around talking about how we're lacking, and there's a time and a place, obviously, business metrics, you might just actually need to sit up straight and get things back in line. If you're believing in them and showing them like, hey, we're making forward progress, then they're going to feel a lot better, which is also why you need systems in place, right? And thinking about how do we effectively think, how do we know when someone's doing well, both on the hard side and on the soft side of business? And there's times where it feels like the worst job in the world. And that's why also you need to have that community, right? There's other business owners I can reach out to. Thankfully, I have Glenn as a coach. My dad ran his own business. And so I have some people I can reach out to when I am in the doom loop. And it's, look, I don't know how to find anything constructive right now.
Yeah.
I need some help. It's really more of, when I'm in that root mode, it's really more my mindset than it is. And then you get into the gain and wow, like we built this from nothing.
Yeah.
And we're providing a ton of value to our clients, and we're providing a ton of value to the people who work here. And that really lights me up.
Yeah. So how does your philosophy degree affect how you think about the doom loop and how you think about leadership?
I didn't even know it was a thing until I took a class in college. And I was like, what? We get to just sit around and talk about cool ideas. And this sounds awesome. So it really has helped me process things and how to think through getting prepared as well to make sure that I'm willing to back up what I'm going to put out there. It gives me a lot of confidence in the ability to write effectively, communicate effectively with employees and with subcontractors and with suppliers and with inspectors. There's a lot of really great thinking out there that you can then be more selective, and you can look at a book and look at thoughts and be like, that's just a perspective. I'm actually not going to feed my mind that, because I think it's not in line with where I'm headed. So it's allowed me to sort through the good and the bad and stay pretty aligned with being true to myself and true to those around me.
So you actually mentioned being more purpose-driven as a CEO. So when you started the company and where you're at today, how has your vision purpose really evolved with Glenn's help? Like, how's that evolved for you as you think about where you're at as a CEO and where you're going?
At first, it was just to survive and to get money in the bank and to make sure that, is this actually a business? Is this working? And it was about, all right, I want to make sure that if I'm going to do this, I did want to get a return on my investment, because it is so much time and stress and effort that early on I was very focused on making sure we were making money and that it was successful. And I think that it makes a lot of sense. I think you just practically have to do that. Or if you're not good at that, there are visionaries, right, that aren't, as always on the practical side, you need somebody to keep you on track that way. But then as it evolves, you're like, okay, great, this is working. Now I want this to start to evolve. I want this to be bigger than me. I want it to be better than me. I actually want to selflessly develop other people. I think after you achieve some of those first kind of, okay, I achieved this goal, and then you set another goal, and then you set another goal. And for me, they're always around revenue and profit, which is great and is really important. But then you just see that, is the next thing just another revenue goal and just another, I want this to be a little bit more. And how do I make this into something that isn't just about me? How do I do that? I didn't really know. I knew that I wanted to try. That's why it took a few conversations with Glenn, and Glenn started to tease that out of me, that
A lot of purpose.
yeah, we
The
got to
why.
have these conversations, the why, and then you're like, okay, yeah, this now is starting to feel like a new challenge that is going to involve a lot of growth on my end, and a lot of reflection and a lot of work, and not always the work that as a carpenter I was used to. And I like to say in carpentry, you get A's or F's. It's very clear whether your work is done or it's not. You can't fake whether the cabinets are there or not. But you can't fake so many things. As a philosophy major, you can just argue your way out of things. So in carpentry, it's done or it's not. Create and believe internally where we're headed as a company is also aligned with who I am and where I want to go. And that's now a whole lot more fun than what is 2 or 3 years ago.
So Glenn is, as a coach, when you look at some of the clients you work with, and some of them don't have their really purpose driven other than making a buck. And that's what people are in businesses to make money. We get all that. But you as a coach, like, how do you introduce becoming more purpose driven? Why do we exist as an organization? How do you start to introduce that and get CEOs to start to lead from the front, thinking about that purpose and vision for the future?
Yeah, it's a really good question, John. And I think Dan is a really good example of, and I don't know for you, for so many times when I meet owners and CEOs and they want to engage in a conversation with me, it's because they feel stuck. And it's usually because they've achieved a level of success. And I understand this too. This is how I felt as a CEO. They've achieved a level of success. They got to a place. And I think many of the times we think that place is, I'm going to build an X $1 million company, or I want a company of this size. And we get there and we find that, okay, what's next? Or, God, this doesn't feel as good as I thought it was going to feel. I just work more and more and more, and I'm making money, but like there needs to be more than that. This is something that I personally feel, and I a lot of the CEOs I feel. So as Dan said, that teasing out, and how do we do that as coaches is asking the questions. What is it you really want to accomplish? What's your purpose in life? What do you want to accomplish in life? Why are you here? And I think when we start asking questions like that, it gets us thinking deeper of like, wow, why do I want to do this? What
Yeah.
is it for me? These people I work with, I don't want to grow a bigger company because it's so much more work. One of my clients I've worked with for quite some time is what they found is it's not necessarily about being bigger, it's about being a better company.
Yeah.
And when they get that place to a better company, I had a CEO say to me, I remember 2 years ago, we'd been working together about 3 years, maybe a little more. And he said, you know what? My job is starting to get fun now.
Hmm.
And to me, that just lit me up because yes,
Yeah.
it should be fun, not only for you as head of the company, but for your team. Like people should enjoy coming here. They should enjoy what they're doing. We all do spend so much time working. We should do it more than just to make a buck. We
Yeah.
should enjoy what we do. We should enjoy who we work with, and we should enjoy who we work for,
Yeah.
the right clients.
I was going to ask you guys, and I run into this with a lot of my clients, really successful. And to be honest with you, I know their zero in their bank account isn't really dramatically changing their life. Another 100,000, another million, whatever it is.
There
It's
you go.
like, my life's not any different today. If I had another $1 million in the bank or whatever. And I think in essence, that's what you're starting to say is that at some point, the money in the bank account, that's great. It's rewarding and it creates hopefully some safety for us so that we don't feel like the sky's falling. But the reality is it becomes more than that. It becomes what's the legacy we're leaving? How are we developing additional people? How are we helping those people provide for themselves and their families? I think in the essence, that's what happens with becoming more purpose driven. Do you guys agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, when you can genuinely feel inside that you're more excited about seeing somebody else succeed than yourself succeeding, and that's not in a way to throw yourself under the bus, but when you feel that makes me want to get up in the morning.
And you know what? And that is exactly going back to our friend Jim Collins. That's exactly the difference between a level 4 leader and a level 5 leader.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of leader that I would submit personally that I would rather follow.
Oh, for sure.
Right? It's much more rewarding.
Yeah.
And at the same time, successful.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. There's this thing like I've seen from the CEO seat. Hey, it's my company. We're worried about the dollars and cents of it. And I just find that those kind of CEOs, people get worn out from them, right? You're just on this treadmill versus, hey, we got to be successful financially. And yeah, I own the company, but the reality is I can't go anywhere unless we're all going there together. I can't do this on my own. It's that kind of, I think that kind of purpose that becomes very powerful. Aging, gain a little wisdom. That's some of the things that I see in my work.
When I became a business coach 7 years ago, one of the first clients I worked with, one of the members of their leadership team, John was in the kickoff and I was asking the questions. We were talking about purpose. And inevitably someone in the room would say, why does a business exist? And someone always going to say, to make money.
Right.
Well, we could make money doing a variety of things. And so we started going through the purpose and why did this company do what they did? One of the senior leaders said, well, I love this question, Glenn, because I used to work for another company that every company meeting we had, the CEO would stand up and say, we're going to be $100 million company. That's our vision. That's our goal. Yeah. And she said, it got to a point where every time he said that, she goes, I said to my mind, you, I'm not going to stay here just so I can help you get rich.
That's exactly right.
That was the message she was hearing.
Yeah. That's where people go to. Yeah. That's where people go to for sure. Or, hey, it's my company. Like, oh, I'm just going to be here and work my ass off for you just so you can get additional wealth.
There's a time and a place or there are some businesses that are set up that way, and that's fine. If that's what you're going to do, there's just consequences to it.
Right.
And I would love to create a company that is a lasting company, not for ego, more so for the challenge, right? I'm interested in pushing that rock up the hill. I think it's incredibly hard to do. And why not? We have to work. It's as much a philosophical exercise for me as it is that I want to extract money from it. There's just consequences if that's going to be your approach. And great, you could go and get your 20, 30, 50 million bucks. Awesome. But you're probably then going to still be looking around being like, well, what's the point in all that?
Yeah.
It feels hollow.
Yeah.
You're going to have to deal with that at some point.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. All right. So next question, Dan, is were you ever at a point where you thought, this this is getting too big for me, or that feeling of the imposter syndrome. Hey, I started this company. Now it's going to a certain point, and I'm like, oh gosh, do I have what it takes? I'm not sure what to do. And you ever enter those that get to that point?
Yes, absolutely. And I think the times when I reflect on that question, the times that I feel that are actually when I'm going to another level in terms of my capabilities and leadership. And I feel right now like I'm at a great spot because I picked up a lot of skills and I know what I need to develop that I've been working on for the last year and a half with Glenn. And I'm feeling finally, oh, okay, I'm actually starting to embody some of these things. But I know that more than likely there's going to be, as I grow in my leadership, another time period where I am going to feel like where you fake it till you make it, where I do feel like now I'm not quite what I should be. And then you get into the gap and you start to feel like you're not adequate enough. I mean, that's because I'm ignorant. I don't have the knowledge yet. I haven't done the work yet to feel confident. And so then I think that the tendency is then to regress toward the skills that I do have rather than to continue to develop the skills that I need. I fall back into habits. I fall back into what's easy and then develop people. And then, so kind of to your question, John, that's part of the reason I reached out to Glenn, when I still remember our first conversation, or one of our first conversations was me telling him, I know that I can keep growing this business on my own, but it's not fun. I'm not having a good time. I know that I can continue to do it, but I want this to be something that's more enjoyable than just hitting the next revenue goal or hitting the next profit goal. I was just at that point. That's why I was 15 years into my business. And so I'd had perspective. I'd hit those goals and I had seen what that's fun. And it's kind of like a new car. You get a new car, it's fun for a few weeks and then the shine wears off. So yeah, I've definitely been there and we'll be there again. I think that's also, though, that imposter syndrome is reflecting to some extent. I think that's just where you're at in your growth.
Yeah.
And you do have to get through, you have to have those breakthroughs and go to that next level.
John, this is exactly what we found is the doom loop, is where many times as leaders, we get to this point of we're over our skis. We're over our skis, right? And so we lean back on our skis and we regress to the comfortable behaviors. But going back to using the skiing analogy, right? If we're on a new slope that's steeper and we start leaning back into our skis and taking it the way we are, what happens? We really lose control faster than if we lean into it. And I think the doom loop is the same way, of that looking inward. Oh, okay, I'm going to go back and take care of this thing because I'm comfortable doing it, versus reaching forward to say, okay, and I love the phrase you used, Dan, is feeling ignorance. What do I need to learn, or who do I need to find that can take care of this or help me take care of this, versus me trying to dive in and take care of myself.
And that's actually this process has also slowed down our company in some ways, right? Because at least initially, you have to start doing things differently.
Yeah.
And that's hard, right? And you're changing the way you're doing things by creating and getting people to become leaders. It just takes time. And you have to be willing to, make that investment. And that investment is not always incredibly tangible. It doesn't feel like you're making progress. And
Yeah. So you got to a point where it wasn't fun. You felt like you needed some outside perspective, some help, some coaching, whatever that looked like then. Why'd you decide to use Glenn as your coach?
Well, he had been a CEO, and that held a lot of weight with me. There's a lot of people that approach me about consulting, and I think a lot of times people want to consult because they don't want to do the hard work. And I realize that consulting is a business, right? But yet the reason some people go into consulting is because their business was really hard and they wanted to get out. And so I'm always, okay, what's your angle? And do you actually have the experience, and do you actually have the care to advise me? And I felt that Glenn had, backed by the metronomic system, and his experience was something that was a different perspective than what I was hearing. from other potential consultants, because I knew I was flat. I admitted that to my entire team, and that I wasn't being the leader that I thought the company deserved. And so, yeah, I just felt that after talking with Glenn, the way he answered my questions with real experiences that he had had, and also within 3 or 4 meetings, the way I'm a big reader, I love staying on top of things. I could tell that Glenn was endlessly curious. Glenn is always reading. He always has references. He was giving me, hey, not only just answering my questions, but he would give me resources relevant and that were really interesting to me. And I was like, this guy's fully engaged, and that's what I need. And he's experienced. Glenn's not phoning it in.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, no,
Appreciate
it's
that.
yeah, you're full on, which is great. And yeah, that's another thing that I saw that was important to me. I don't like to hire people that just want to do their jobs.
Right.
I don't know, we'll get it done for you. It's
Yeah.
Especially your
Thanks. I
business
love it.
coach, right?
yeah,
Right.
Yeah, I'd see
I
worse.
like, yeah.
That'd be
I like Dan's
terrible.
point. It's like anyone. Yeah. And to me, it goes back to purpose, right? Am I here for a paycheck? Am I just showing up to make some money? Right. That's a job. Am I here because I care?
Yeah.
Because this is truly aligns with my purpose, then I'm going to be fully engaged. I'm on a mission. And I think if I would guarantee you, whether it's a sports team or a business, you build a team that's fully engaged for the same reason. They're aligned, they have the same culture, and you're unstoppable. And
Yeah.
that's just so cool to see. And that's where Dan is really, I've seen that realization as we've worked together of you really seeing that realization of when there's been some changes in your team, which is a natural reaction of this process where we come in, and Dan's committed. Dan said, yeah, this is part of us meeting many times to say, I want to make sure you're committed to the process and you're committed to changing yourself. And you were. Not everybody in your company was. Maybe people were thinking like, oh, this is the way we've always worked. This is the way we're going to do things. And to take it to the next level, you have to change things.
yeah,
So you've been through some changes in your team, and you've had the courage to do that, but it hasn't been easy, like you said. But as you're seeing the changes and how that actually brings the team together,
yeah,
you're
yeah,
starting to see the fruits of the labor, right?
yeah. And I think courage is a good word. What is very true is what got you here won't get you there. You said that earlier.
Yeah.
And that is also very true.
Yeah.
And
I think you have to
hard.
buy into
It's
that
hard
as a
to-
concept, right? I think it's really important for that to be really a foundational part of your belief system. Because if you don't, it's
Yeah.
hard to make the changes you need to. So let me ask both you guys this. As I talked about, you talked a little bit about Dan's belief and where he was going, and some of the team was maybe not as didn't maybe see it the same way, which is very typical. We run into this a lot. But Dan, how do you balance accountability and empathy? What's that look like for you?
Accountability and empathy. Well, accountability, you can't really hold somebody accountable to anything unless you have agreed it's a two-way street, right? And
Yeah.
you got to make sure that the buy-in's there before you start holding people accountable. And they have to know what the standards are. You can't just start holding people accountable to things that aren't disclosed. I didn't know that was a standard. Why you're holding me to something that you never told me about. So I think fairness is a big part of it. And then the empathy part of it comes from wanting, for me as the head, there's nobody else to answer to other than myself, ultimately in my company. But it's, what do I want out of the head of this company? And I expect that they are going to want to work at a company where the CEO is holding themselves to the higher standard. And so there's empathy there because you're also saying, we've agreed to this. I know this is hard and I want to help you, right? If you are holding somebody accountable, essentially you're giving them your critical feedback, right? And look at that and think of that as an investment in that person. If you're not going to hold them accountable, then you're actually not helping them. You're actually hurting them. And so I think when you're coming at it from care for everyone else who works there, and you're coming at it from a care for that person's professional development, rather than well, you cost us a bunch of money, you big jerk. That's not developing somebody. That's just putting them down. And so when you're holding them accountable, thinking about them and where they want to go and what, if you were in their seat, I would actually want that feedback because I would want to become a better professional. And I absolutely wouldn't want to let my team down. Oh, I didn't know that I was behaving that way. And that was impacting our other people. I didn't even realize that. I'm so glad you brought that up. And so when I receive that feedback and I get the blinders off from somebody else like Glenn, there's a lot of appreciation there. So just leading with that I'm doing this because I care, rather than I'm a rule enforcer.
Got it. All right, Glenn, same question for you. How do you think you balance accountability and empathy?
Yeah, I think, Dan, you said a lot of really good things there. And it's if you go, the accountability first and foremost, I say you have to model it as a leader, right? We can't be, I'm above that and be false. And you have to model it. And accountability is saying what you're going to do, doing it, and then letting know people you did it. You got to say you did it. And then you just keep doing that. And you're modeling the accountability. And I think, Dan, the other part you really hit on this well is we really need to ensure there's a mutual understanding of expectations, right? I expect you to be doing, and that do you understand that? And then you need to sign up for that. You say, yep, I can do that. That's part of the process that we use in our coaching, I know, is that who's taking that on, who's going to own it? Right. So that's the accountability. And then coming back to really question is like, all right, oh, you didn't do this by that point in time. You said you were going to do it. Why didn't you do it? And then the empathy is being, I know it's really hard, and acknowledging the feelings. Where do you need help? What is it you need? And help generally doesn't look of what sympathy might look like, which is, oh, here, I'll do that for you. Don't worry about it. If someone took that on, now there might be cases you need to do that, but it's a line between the empathy of what can we do to help you get it done because you said you were going to do it. You own it, versus the sympathy of, oh, don't worry about it. Or the other worse is like, okay, I'm going to dive in and just do it for the person, which really negates them, kind of, in essence, pushes them out of the way.
You think you're solving a problem, but you're actually creating another one.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
I was going to ask a follow-up question to Dan, which is, as an individual that you wanted that feedback, like hey, am I doing this right? Am I jumping high enough? Am I running fast enough? Whatever it is, right? When I go across our business environment today, that there's not a ton of people that want that direct feedback around that kind of coaching. There's a lot of people that make up the organizations that we start to work with that would just like to get a paycheck and let the owner and CEO deal with all the pain around running the business and getting cash in the bank. And so I think that our job as leaders is to create clear what's expected of people. And I agree with you 100%, Dan, they have to buy into that, because if they don't, if it's to move these 3 piles of dirt from there to there every day and we're aligned around that, then I go home at the end of the day and I know that I've accomplished something. But if I can't buy into that, then we have another issue that we have to deal with. What I see today is that I see a lot of empathy from leaders that can't hold people accountable in an appropriate way, because I don't think that they can create a trusting relationship. And Dan, you talked about this. If I want to be honest with you, it's because I want the best for you. And I think that's really true. If you look at great coaches, they want the best for you. They want you to be successful at whatever you're doing, whether you're working in a sales role or you're a quarterback of a football team. They want you to be successful. And you have to know, and they have to be able to create this relationship with you that, you're going to challenge them. You're going to coach them hard sometimes because you see what their potential is and you want the best for them. And they have to trust that you have a goodness in your heart, that you're doing these things for them to move them ahead. So I think as leaders, we have that responsibility to get a common ground with our people and help them know that we're there to help them get the things in their life that they want to. I think work should be a vehicle for people to get the things that they need to out of life, right? Whether it's put a roof over their head or have a car or put their kids through college or whatever it is, we should know those things. And as a leader, when I know those things, I can hold them accountable and I can be empathetic at the same way. But it takes, I think, another level of discovery almost for leaders. And I think a lot of leaders are really still even uncomfortable going in there and asking people around what their personal goals are, or why do you come work for me, or why do you come work for our organization every day? Because there's lots of options. So what are the reasons you come here? Because I got to know that if I'm going to be a really effective leader, and create an accountable and empathetic workforce. I got to know those things around people, why people come to work for me. So that's my perspective on it.
Yeah. And why do they come for you work personally? And then what do they also love about the company? Like what other than money motivates them to show up at work is
Correct.
another way to be thinking
Yeah.
about. And
Yeah.
let's do more of that. I think there's a lot of people that if they saw what servant leadership is, they would actually be pretty interested in it rather than thinking of leadership as just dealing with problems. And it is that. It is ultimately sometimes your responsibility. But when you're running a good organization, your processes should help you with problems. And pain is a teacher. And what do we need to pay attention to?
Mhm.
What is the pain we're experiencing and why? And then instead of going into the doom loop over pain, right? And then you get reactive. Oh my gosh, I want this pain to stop. I'm going to do something about it. Why is this happening in the first place? Let's chill out. Let's take a step back. Let's ask some questions. And we always talk about being a proactive company rather than a reactive company.
Yeah.
And we need to pay attention to, hey, was there some percentage of my week that felt more reactive than proactive? Was I behind? Did I feel behind all week? Or did I get some time where I felt like, oh, I'm actually on top of my game? And how do you create more of that in the company? How do you get more of, we're proactive, we're on top of this, I'm feeling empowered versus dumped on. And there's no way I'm gonna get all this done. I may as well just not even try. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very good.
So, Dan, you mentioned as we move to the next section around leadership, you had mentioned servant leadership. So, can you help for our listeners to describe kind of what your view or vision is around servant leadership? And then how do you, as a CEO, how do you practice that day to day?
taking time to reflect. I think Glenn talked about, I'm not a big journaler, but I reflect regularly. It's just part of who I am. And looking at, was I putting myself first in that instance, or was I putting that person and the company first? And I know that kind of sounds maybe sometimes a little bit, that's what you're supposed to say. But when you really do start to believe that, you're like, oh, actually, this aligns. It's not you're throwing yourself under the bus. It's not an either or situation. It's, as Jim Collins would say, the tyranny of or versus the genius of and.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm,
It's the genius of and that when I am responding things of our core values and our bigger why, when I'm looking at that versus how do I make this pain stop right now, the results start to speak for themselves. There's less stress, there's less reactivity, it's not perfect. It's still hard. In those difficult moments, it gives you the why you're going to get through this. And you're going to get through this, not just to get through it, but to make those around you better and to make your company better and to make your client experience better. That's why you want to get through the problem. I don't want to get through this problem just so I can go and watch Netflix. It's the way you're thinking through problems. Are you thinking through problems in a way that aligns with where you want your company to go? Or are you looking at problems simply to get them out of your way and make it somebody else's problem?
okay. Glenn, how about you? Do you have a perspective on how you see servant leadership showing up today in the clients that you work with?
I think servant leadership really it's about having the caring and the empathy. I remember early in my career, worked for a really good company, but we talked about servant leadership, and that was a buzzword. This was like back in the 90s. It almost seems sometimes it got misconstrued as an employee saying, well, you're my boss and you're my servant leader, so you have to do this, or
Right.
I need this thing. It really got misconstrued, but I really like taking it back, and I like how you referenced Jim Collins and the fact that at level 5 leadership, it's doing it for the right reason and doing it with care. And a lot of times I think about as great leadership as like being a great parent. And being a great parent isn't saying, oh, we're not going to go to the store because it's closed. And it's like, wait, it's 5:00. And at some point a kid figures out like, you're just lying to me out of convenience instead of having to say no. But it's like having to say, well, no, and here's why we're not going to do this. You do that for people, it's because we care about them because we want we want our kids to grow up to be really good people. And same with our employees, our organizations. If we really care about them, we want them to grow. We want them to take on more accountability. And many times I think about this as you think about for an employee, what if we worry so much about whether they leave and do we have to give them more money versus sometimes I think it's okay for us to put something into a person and get them to a level that maybe where we're going as a company isn't the same place they want to go, but
Yeah.
what we've done with them while they're at our company, we've taught them enough and invested in them enough that they've gained skills and value that they could go somewhere else. And,
Right.
and Dan, I know you're a really good example of that. I hear you say that many times about your people. It's like, you know what? I really want what's best for them. And I think by doing that, you perpetuate this whole feeling within your company and a culture within the company of, okay, we're here because we want the best. And if we all don't want it within this company, then we can go somewhere else. And that's
Mm.
maybe a little bit of a harsh example of it, but I think it does show that true servant leadership, because when we do that with people, they're going to care about us and our company much more than they care just about the paycheck.
Yeah.
Right.
Ultimately, I think that's where it goes to.
Can you be empathetic and remove somebody from your organization? Do those go hand in hand or no?
Yeah, absolutely. You can be empathetic. I think you need to be empathetic. I think again, I care about humans and I care about everybody I interact with. And you can say, you know what? It is time for you to head somewhere else. I know this is hard to hear. You can talk about it plainly with them. You should have that relationship if they're a direct report. I think that's also, sorry to plug Metronomics, but that's also the scorecard system where
Please
you're
don't be
reviewing
sorry, Dan.
people, you're
Plug
reviewing
away.
people on a
Thank you,
quarterly
Dan.
basis. So they know where they stand, and you
Yeah.
are coaching them, you're telling them, right? And it's also empathetic for your entire team, right? A players want to play with A players.
Yes.
And they get annoyed with you if you don't pull the hook on someone who's not aligned with the core values and not aligned with where we're headed as a business. And you owe it to your people. And if you don't, your culture is going to become toxic and you're going to have a revolving door. And that's also why it's totally fine if you coach them up and sometimes you don't have that position for that next where they want to go with their career. That's good news in that you have helped develop somebody, and you should
Absolutely.
also have systems and have your reputation strong enough so you have backfill. And if it's a key employee, there's obviously strategies around how to have them just not drop a bomb on you and leave and give you the 2 weeks notice when you really need 6 months to replace a key person. So you should have those relationships with your people and work to develop them. That doesn't mean you're not going to get bit or that you're going to not have some hard times. I think the other thing as a CEO is you do need to be ready to take some knocks and to just absorb it and move on and not whine about it. You're in that position and you're just going to get burned sometimes. And I think instead of becoming cynical and, oh, I can never get burned again, I'm never going to let that happen again. I know that's a really legitimate feeling, yet it's probably a waste of your time. What you should be doing is thinking about how to go to the next opportunity and how do I make this better and bigger and how do I learn from this rather than woe is me.
I think that's a phenomenal perspective. And I think the thing is that I don't care how good a leader you are, right? You're a level 5 leader, you're a level 5 servant leader, you're phenomenal at what you do. The reality is you can do everything you can to help people be successful. And there's a lot of people who are going to still blame you for their failure. And you, as the CEO of the company, need to know that you've done everything you can to help make those people successful. They just don't want to be, or maybe don't want to be in your organization. And it's time to move on. And I see this with a lot of CEOs, and I was this way as a young CEO too. I was really affected when I would get that criticism from people that just weren't doing what they needed to do, were negative part of the culture, want to get a paycheck for not really delivering value to the company. And when you try to coach them, this is in the early 90s for me, or late 90s and 2000s, and have these kind of meaningful, sometimes hard conversations with people, you were always the jerk. And the reality is that you can't own all that because it will eat you alive. And I think that's what you're saying is that it's lonely, and you're going to get a lot of people who can shoot arrows at you. And I think you just have to be careful. That's why I think a coach is so essential, because I think you can talk
Yeah.
through that with a coach and say, hey, getting feedback from the organization about something, and the coach can walk you back. And I will say that's some of the most impactful moments I had with my coaches, when those things were occurring, and getting that kind of negative feedback from key personnel decisions, hard decisions you have to make, whatever that is. I'm okay. Like, we're doing the right things, because that can really eat you up. I think anybody's dealing with leading people, you're going to have people that just, for whatever reason, they're just not going to see you in a good way. And you can't let that eat you alive, because it'll set you back.
Yeah.
And it affects all your other people too, that you're disengaged for some period of time because you're giving too much power to that person's comments.
It's a narrow path of, you can't lose your empathy.
Yep.
You can't just become so impervious that you just
Yep.
don't care. And then you start becoming either reckless. I think that it should burn you a little bit at times when you get some feedback. Yet you do have to decide, when am I actually going to let this in and learn from it? And when am I going to just keep on going down the road? And like you said, John, I made the best decision that I could. I didn't break any laws. I wasn't unethical. I did absolutely everything I could. And you know what? It's time to go home and be with my kids and focus on that versus something that happened a week or 2 weeks ago that I did my absolute best.
Yeah.
I remember a conversation with my coach about this same subject, and he says, here's the way to really scrutinize your feelings around these things. And he said, do you admire them? I'm like, well, what do you mean? He said, so the people that are being critical of you, for whatever they're being critical of you about, do you admire them? He said, you have to be careful not to give power to people that, that you're not looking at them as a mentor or as a whatever, and saying, gosh, if Mike would have said that to me, that would really be impactful for me. And so that was interesting, as he used this as kind of gate almost for how he thought about how you deal with some of those kind of things. I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, that's good advice. I like that viewpoint. Yeah.
So, all right, let's work through our closing question. So we asked this of every CEO. And Dan, if you're writing the CEO playbook, what are the 3 things that you would tell other CEOs that they should be doing?
First and foremost, in general, when you start to feel yourself being reactive, I would encourage pause. To bring up John Wooden, first you learn to walk, then you learn to run, then you learn to sprint.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you've gotten to the point where you're sprinting, you still need to realize, okay, I actually should take a step back here. I should get some perspective. I should ask some questions. And also just being reflective of, am I in a spot where I can be an effective and world-class CEO right now? Or do I need to come at this at a different time? So I would just encourage pausing, number one. And then, don't ever use that as an excuse for laziness. Don't ever use that as an excuse for not engaging with what you need to take care of. I like and I don't what Glenn says. Glenn says, Dan, as CEO, you're either causing the problems or tolerating them. That's as a philosophy major, thinking about that. It's great advice, but it's okay. That's a lot.
We do with that, huh?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Because that phrase gets knocked around up here quite a bit. And it's good. It's good to be reflective of that. Okay. So pause. The other thing I would say is care about other people's success. And when you start to embody that and believe in that, it really makes your life have a different perspective. And I think everybody starts to feel that, right? And then people start to believe in themselves and they want to show up. The other thing I would say is have community, have people around you, right? We've talked about feeding your brain. What are you letting in, right? I think you should guard yourself of what you're exposing yourself to, who is around you, and make sure that you're feeding your mind in a way that's in line with your values and in line with where you want to go. If you're taking in positive things that are reinforcing where you're headed and the people around you, obviously you don't want a bunch of yes people around you either. You need feedback. You need to be open enough to get criticism. And at the same time, you want to have people that are aligned with what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, those are good answers.
Well said.
I love your pause answer. It's interesting. Yeah, the pause answer is different. I don't think we've heard that from another CEO, but I love that. It's really collect yourself. It's almost a little bit like maybe we got to go slow to go fast. So let's collect ourselves and Make sure we're not spinning the wheels, right? I like that guidance. Thanks for that.
Funny that you did use a kind of that. Another CEO I work with, we have these words to describe some of the behaviors that might not always be productive and some that are. And he's a pouncer,
Oh, sure.
right? And that kind of like, well, I see an issue, I'm going to jump right into it. Listen, are you going to pause? But then there's also CEOs who are ponderers. And I hear this from some teams a lot is, you know what, we never make a decision around here. We have endless meetings and we never come to an action item, and they need to know every detail around everything, or they never trust me to make a decision. So that's the ponder, and then there's the pouncer. So really, Dan, the pause is that's okay, pause. And then usually I'd say pause and then ask questions. Ask the question.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
All right, John.
Glenn, you want to wrap
take
it
us
up
home?
for us?
Oh, absolutely.
I think
Dan,
I think you're the take it home guy.
I'm the take it home guy. I love that.
Yeah. Today you are.
Thank you so much, Dan. I appreciate, us being able to work together, you and your team and your whole company. We're going to be doing a whole disc workshop for your whole company here coming up in a couple of weeks. But I appreciate you choosing me as your coach and trusting me. John, absolutely appreciate you as my co-host and my colleague, someone who always challenges me, and love doing these things with us together.
That's fun.
And if anybody who's listening to that, if you're a CEO or business owner and some of these issues may have sounded similar to you, you find yourself in the CEO doom loop and you're looking for someone to potentially help you with that. So John and I are here for, but certainly we love everybody who listens to the podcast to be thoughtful about what you're hearing here, what you're learning here, and always love the feedback. So if you can subscribe, all right, listen to the podcast and share it with other people. But Dan, thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.